Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. We are taking a look at what's making headlines locally and internationally. And before the break, we had a report by Willie Lusige telling us about a meeting of Western leaders that basically decided to choose a negotiator, political negotiator for the region. Now, we had Senator Malala coming out to actually condemn that, saying there is no need for a negotiator. Mr. Okango, that story is quite interesting. Western, they are not moving quite at the pace that their counterparts in Mount Kenya are. They are not deciding who to back unanimously. What do you think is going on in that region, and why are they being wishy-washy when it comes to the 2022 polls?
You know, it's not the first time that this is happening. And if you recall the famous Mulembe unity, the elusive Mulembe unity, it has been there for quite some time. But I think it is important that now we realize that politics is a negotiated process. As I said earlier, when they talk about negotiations, they are looking for the best interest for their people. And it is even good, my good friend, Malala, is saying that if you're not a presidential candidate, then get out of the negotiating table.
Yes.
It means that he understands that it's a negotiation. Unlike our friend from the yellow fever, who doesn't understand that politics is about negotiation. Now, for me, I think it is in the interest of Kenyans to ensure that they get the best of the best. There are candidates who have come out, or aspirants who have come out to lead this country. And I've named them: Raila Odinga, Gideon Moi, there's Musalia Mudavadi, there's Speaker J.B. Muturi. They have said that they want to lead this country. But what some of them have not done is to show and demonstrate that they actually want to lead. They're only, out of them, there are only, I think, 3 who have launched, actually. Gideon Moi has launched, and he has been endorsed by his party.
Right.
Raila Odinga has demonstrated that he wants to lead. William Ruto has done the same. But now, when it comes to regional politics, every region has got their own challenges. And the challenge in the Western Kenya might not be the same challenge in the central Kenya. So, if they're going to negotiate on the table, they're coming with the challenges that are affecting their region. And they're asking that aspirant to tell them what they're going to do to fix those challenges. When you listen to the Western leaders who say that they are going to negotiate with the candidate from the handshake team, they said that they will be looking for that time before December this year. They are very specific who they are going to negotiate with. Within the handshake team, there's only one candidate that has shown to run for president and is not in that team. That is William Ruto. So it means they'll be negotiating with Gideon Moi, they'll be negotiating with Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo, and Raila Odinga. And in my view, I think if you listen to them keenly also, the presence of Governor Oparanya, Francis Atwoli, and the other governors, you can already tell who they would want to meet. And that is going to happen, as I said. They are going to have caucus groups, regional leaders, women, youth, people living with disability. We will all negotiate with these people. We will put them to task and ask them, what are you going to do to ensure that this specific caucus group, their interest is taken care of? There's nothing wrong with that. But the most important thing about Western Kenya is that they have never spoken in one voice. And I think that is democracy.
Right.
And I want to congratulate them for that. They're democratic. You are free to support whoever you want. And that is what the provision of law tells us in Article 38. That you can do, in politics, you can support whoever you want, whichever party you want, at whatever time you want. So they can do that. But for now, what Kenyans must understand is that this economy is melting. The young people don't have jobs. The women of this country are not in position to lead. The devolution that we have having as a framework should be strengthened so that we adopt the word as the primary unit of accelerated development. Who among the aspirants will do that? Not all of them are able to do that.
Yes, Professor Elmi, I'd like you to come in on this. The elusive, as Mr. Okango has put it, elusive, Luya unity. At this point, one would imagine Francis Atwoli, as a negotiator, was already doing that before this meeting. So at this point, talks or deliberations should be at a more advanced stage as opposed to what we are hearing coming out of the news from Western region. What do you make of that situation, or do you think it is a no-brainer that they shall be throwing their weight behind Raila Odinga and they're just waiting for him to, step up?
Yes, I think I will go a step further than what my friend here, the Secretary General, said. The selection of, what does the selection of Francis Atwoli mean as far as the Murembe nation is concerned?
Yes.
It means that the Murembe nation is flowing to the prophecy. There's a prophecy that if the presidency must come to the Luya nation, it must come through the leg.
Okay.
So I think that prophecy is getting completely conspicuous. We know what Francis stands for as far as the politics of the presidency is concerned. He has been consistent, he has been direct, and he has been very fierce. He has been using that, that the language of his. He knows so the selection of Atwoli is directly means that the Luya nation is endorsing Raila Omolo Odinga. So the other thing is the nitty-gritty. How are you going to construct the political agenda? Who else are you going to bring on board? And they're saying, they are going to negotiate with the handshake group. The handshake group is essentially who?
Raila Odinga.
It's Raila Odinga and the President Uhuru Kenyatta. So Uhuru Kenyatta is not contesting for presidency. Who else are they going to negotiate with? And what is the negotiation for? The negotiation is they said they want to be in the government. Whose government? Then it's definitely Raila Omolo's government. So in essence, I think the Luya nation has spoken. And we, the rest of Kenya, can also see. You see, Raila has changed his tactics.
Yeah.
From, rallies to, to now meeting the leaders and the people who really matter. You remember the other day, he was in Garissa, and he was endorsed enormously by the people from not only northern Kenya, not only northeastern, or rather the former northeastern, but northern Kenya, including eastern, the lower eastern. They were Marsabit fellows, they are fellows from Isiolo. So I think we are looking at a new dawn in our political arrangement and an approach to politics.
Yeah.
So Francis Atwoli, we know whom he wants. And that has already sent a significant signal.
Right.
I think the senator is part of the ripples that this politics has created.
Very interesting. And as you heard in that soundbite earlier on, he is indeed being quite rebellious when it comes to that. We shall be watching that to see how it transpires. But let's move on to another exercise that has been happening over the past few weeks, rather 2 weeks, 2 weeks or so. The first week of the voter registration exercise drew to an end on Sunday, and a spot check across the country indicated a worrying low turnout. And as senior political affairs reporter Jeff Kirui reports, this trend has jolted key political players into action, especially the presidential hopefuls who are seeking to reap big from the IEBC's target of between 6 to 7.2 million new voters sought by the IEBC. Take a look.
As the mass voter registration exercise enters the second week, scenes across the registration centers have been of apathy towards the registration drive.
Sare, sasa, guys, ukuja uchukue kura, si nilikupatia ID.
A visit to Juja Farm Registration Center in Kiambu County, we meet Lucy Gashanga, a clerk who has resorted to mobilize the area residents to register.
You make sure na kura hii.
She has a target of 60 persons per day, but to achieve it has been an uphill task.
Tunafosiwa kuwapigia simu cause wengine wazazi na wajua kwa watoto wenye walifanya form 4. Wengi wa area yetu ninawajua, tukishikana na chifu wetu cause chifu ananiambia fulani na fulani walichukua ID
Kama huku Juja tumepewa target ya watu 200 na 54, lakini unapata ni siku moja ambao tumefikia almost karibu na hiyo target ambao ni 151.
The 7.2 million new voters targeted by IEBC to participate in the 2022 general election has presidential hopefuls relishing to reap big. The low turnout jolting them to a frenzy to rally their supporters to turn out to register. ODM leader Raila urging his supporters to register as voters, pegging his official announcement of his candidature on the outcome of the registration drive in his strongholds.
Nitafanya uamuzi mwisho wa mwezi huu. Nataka kuona kama wale majeshi yangu wameshika bunduki na risasi ndani yake. Bunduki ni kitambulisho, risasi ni kura.
30-day mass voter registration begins 4th October 2021. Usiachwe nyuma.
Odinga's political nemesis, Deputy President William Ruto, unveiling a campaign strategy to rally the youth to register as voters.
Kijana, changamkia hiyo kura. Juu kaa hauko. Take your place at the table. Safisha rada. Jisajili.
The focus now shifting on the IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati to enhance awareness amidst claims of skewed distribution of registration material.
Nasikia wengine wananunua hiyo kits. Kama ni kununua kutuambie. Mimi na Cyrus na Oka, Musalia, Gideon na Weta. Na hivi karibuni dada yetu Mother Karua, you talked about how. Watakuja. Tuende na sisi tununue. Na sisi tuende tununue hizo kits, if that is what it is. Because you want to register.
IEBC hopes to increase the number of registered voters to participate in the upcoming polls from the current 19.6 million to 26.9 million voters. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Right, that need to have the youth come out to vote is very apparent from some of those campaign videos that you're seeing there with the Deputy President appealing directly to young people to come out and get registered, and then they will be able to vote. Now, Mr. Okango, this one is a very unique situation whereby the political leaders themselves are feeling pressed to have those numbers increased, and it's not just being left to the IEBC. What do you make of it? And of course, do you think this will, some of these strategies will influence the youth to actually get themselves registered and participate in their civic duty?
Yes, it is true. It is true that out of the projected or the targeted additional 7 million, majority of them are young people. And actually, majority of them are going to be the first-time voters, people who just turned 18, and they are very excited. But look, the presidential aspirants, not only presidential aspirants, the people who are seeking for elective seats have interest because that is the only tool of trade that they need to secure their seats. They must come out in large numbers and ensure that that person that they want gets, the most important thing is registered as a voter. If you look at the methods that the politicians are going to apply going forward, I've seen Daktari William Ruto saying, rada ni kuchukua kura. I saw the other time Raila Odinga saying, rada ni rao. They're going to change the language to fit that demographic group of young people so that they can get to take the vote.
For sure.
I have also seen, I think in Juja, that lady literally calling. And I think it is a civic duty. The people of Kenya must now understand that the general principle of electoral system requires that we get free, fair, and verifiable election and free from violence. But you cannot do that if you don't cast your ballot. And you cannot cast your ballot if you don't take or register as a voter. Today, statistics show us that there are so many young people who secured their national identity cards and they're lying somewhere. And it is that card that you need to go and register as a voter. And maybe I want to take this opportunity to speak to the young people that for you to secure your future, for you to elect a president, for you to elect an MC, a member of parliament, woman rep, you must get registered as a voter because that is the only opportunity that you can elect a leader that will help you throughout your life.
Yes, Professor Elmi, I'd like
think
Professor to come in also on this one. Professor, you are a Chancellor of a university, that is Rongo University. I do believe you have insights into the inner workings of the mind of young people. Why do you think many of them are not stepping up? Why the disinterest? Why the apathy, so to speak?
I think first, one thing that the politicians now agree is that people must be registered.
Yes.
And I think this country, from the demographics, is consisting of largely young people. It is time to, they are rightfully urging the youthful people to get registered as voters. But before registration, you must have an ID card. And this ID card has enormous problem. And I can tell you that, coming from northeastern Kenya, that the majority of the people do not have ID card because of bureaucratic and, wrong application of law, and sometimes even discrimination. So most of these university students, other younger people do not have ID card. So it is important for those ones who have an ID card, they should register as voters.
Yeah.
Number two, the government must make initiative to ensure that those ones who don't have ID cards get it as fast as possible and in the easiest possible way. The other thing is that from where I come from, northeastern Kenya, or particularly Wajir County, we're having massive drought. And this drought has limitation on flow of people to do the required registration. So I think I will join the rest of the Kenyans and the leaders in political parties and whoever who is looking for any political seat to urge Kenyans so that they register as voters. And above that, the Kenya government and the people who are concerned must make ID cards available for those fellows, for the youth and everybody else who desires, and make this thing, simple and available at every. There are some restrictive rules in northeastern, for example, which has been there for a very long time, that you cannot get. We don't get ID cards like any other Kenyan. You must be vetted by some group of people, which is not actually in the constitution. Which is not in the constitution. It is an illegal thing, but it has been perpetuated as a discriminative tool. This is the time to remove it and remove it for good, so that everybody else in this country, whether you are from border country, you are bordering with Somalia or Ethiopia or wherever, there are mechanisms to check your citizenship, and there are people who have those responsibilities.
Yes.
So I think, in essence, I will join all leaders in this country to urge everybody else to register, particularly the youth, because we have been complaining of bad leadership. The only way we can remove bad leadership or bad governance is through the electoral process. And the electoral process, you must have an electoral card. And for you to have an electoral card, you must have an ID card. So in essence, coming from the academia, I know that there are many of our youth who do not have an ID card. So let's make it simple for them. Let them also register, and the government must be cognizant of the fact that there are some areas today where the registration cannot take place, not because of anything else, but because of other difficulties in life. For example, drought has been declared by the president as a national issue. So that has its problems. So the IEBC and everybody else who is concerned, who wants to, and all of us must first, when you're hungry, where is your priority? Is it the voter's card, or when your animals are thirsty, they have no. So these are the dynamics that we must look at, and possibly because of this drought, I think the IEBC should probably extend time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because some of these problems are unique to those areas, and if you were to prioritize finding water or pasture for your animals as opposed to getting registered, of course one would be more important, because it's how you make your living, that is your livelihood for you and your family. And of course there are other issues that actually affect the youth's interest in voting. We've just spoken about Western Region. Mr. Okango, Western Region is known for a lot of voter apathy. And do you think this time it will be different? And when you look at the strategies that are being employed, are this actually things that the youth care about? When you see William Ruto speaking and sharing and trying to tell them and convince them that having a seat at the table would actually influence your life in the future. Are these things going to work?
My answer would be no. Would be no because the challenges that the young people are facing today are challenges with access to those services.
Right.
In fact, speaking their language on TV and appealing to them to get the vote is one. But making them access that service is another.
Yes.
I want to encourage IEBC to partner with stakeholders. And stakeholders here, I mean politicians, religious groups, professionals, the academy like Prof here, so that they take these services to the people's doorsteps.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with ensuring that IEBC have enough resources to go per household to check whether actually in that household, those who are 18 and above are registered voters, because it's a civic duty that we must undertake. Number two, the religious leaders in churches must start making it their business to communicate this language to every Kenyan who is not registered to register. The academia must start doing that. Young people must make it their business. But the IEBC also must sustain the stakeholder engagement to an extent that they make it a do or die. Because if we want to have 26 million voters by the end of the year or by next year, then we must put a lot of effort now. And politicians will only do that in the areas that they perceive to be their zones. But remember, there's somebody in northeastern Kenya who is not able to access that service. Why? Because the government has not put enough resources to make that service closer to them.
Right.
There's somebody in Wajir. So my advice to IEBC, and by extension to the government, is that young people are out here. They want to get the vote. Not only in Western Kenya, everywhere. They want to participate in electing their leaders from MCA to the president. But you know what? In some instances, they are not able to access that service. Even if IEBC says that their constituency, IEBC constituency stations, I think, as you said, people are struggling in life. They want to put food on the table. They want to see the next meal is coming from where. They are not going to give it as a priority. And that's why even those messaging that William Ruto and the team are coming up with might not be effective. You must go to them and tell them, we have a database of young people or of Kenyans, and it shows that you have an ID and you have or a passport, and you have not registered as a voter. Would you want to register as a voter? Of course, it's not mandatory, but we are encouraged that instead of complaining that, you know, there are portals, the government is not doing this because of bad leadership, we must now use the vote as the gun to fight at the ballot when the right time comes. That is only possible if all of us are registered voters.
Okay. Now let's move on from our civic duty. Hopefully everyone will get registered and participate in the upcoming polls. Let's move on to a situation that is unfolding in Parliament. Underway plans by a Coast Regional MP to censure in the National Assembly Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang has been condemned by a cross-section of members of Parliament. Legislators Simba Arati of Dagoretti North, Samuel Arama of Nakuru West, and Ezekiel Machogu of Nyaribari Masaba scoffed at the move by Nyali Member of Parliament Muhammad Ali, terming it selfish, and speaking during a seventh-day Adventist annual camp. They said the same.
Mtoto yetu ambaye naketi hapa ametupatia sifa kwa sababu ile kasa alipewa na Mheshimiwa Rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya Uhuru Kenyatta, ameifanya kisujaa. Na sisi Bwana CS tulisema hata iwe mifugo, hata iwe ng'ombe, hata iwe ndovu, inakuanga na kiongozi mmoja. Asaba Gusii, jamii ya Wakisii, sisi hatuwezi kuwa kule juu watu wote. Sisi tunatambua na tunaomba Mungu ya kwamba wewe sasa na hata baada ya 2022 pahali utasema hapo ndio tuko na wewe ndio utawakilisha sisi.
Vita Mheshimiwa Matiang anapigwa sio vita nyingine yoyote, ni kwa sababu alisimamisha lile genge la wezi kupitia kwa rais kutoiba mali ya umma.
Our brother CS Matiang is our kingpin in Kisi. The direction that he will give us will take.
The chiefs and assistant chiefs, those of you have ID cards lying there. We have enough ID cards, we have enough registration officials across the country. We are ready to support voter registration. Lakini tafadhali nawaomba, register to vote. Chukua kadi yako ya kura.
About voting and the need to get yourself registered. There's talk about kingpins, and of course the new element in this particular story is the fact that these members of parliament are alleging that Fred Matiang'i, the CS, is being targeted because of his war on corruption. Professor Elmi, do you agree?
First and foremost, I would like to begin by saying that, you know, Matiang'i is a presidential appointee. And give the devil his due. Where Matiang has started with the Ministry of Education. He has done very well.
Yeah.
We had a lot of problem in insecurity issues. He has also done very well. So I think the Matiang'i issue is more of politics than performance. So I think people who perform, we should be able to give them the right to continue. In any case, this is the tail end. Matiang'i is, we are expecting a new government. And this government will have new cabinet ministers. So I think this is something, politics directed at the presidency and the handshake. So I think Matiang'i is not the kingpin. There's no way he said that he is a Kisii kingpin or that kind of thing. The only thing is that he has been firm in his decisions.
Yes.
Firm in the way he does things. Firm in that we have also seen in the way he performs. And his performance has merited him to be moved from one place to the other, and he has gotten the ear of the presidency. So I think in essence, of course, no, everybody makes an error. My fear is if we politicize if we bring politics into civil service. Today it is Matiang'i, tomorrow it will be somebody else, somebody. I think this is the wrong direction. Wrong direction, Kabisa. So
Right.
what we should be able to do is, first, the Matiang'i's tenure is ending by the virtue of the constitutional requirement. So I think what these guys are doing is, this guy it is assumed, it's alleged by the other group that he has been fighting, William Ruto, so we must remove him. And anybody else who is against so and so, we must remove him. Then we'll end up removing everybody. So let's remove politics out of the civil service. That is my advice.
Okay. While that is, of course, a noble call, Professor Elmi, Mr. Okango, I'd like you to weigh in on that, because as you've heard, even some of the leaders in that particular story, they say that they're just waiting for him to give direction, which means we might be over the civil service issue, and he's being viewed more of a local leader, and of course politics is seeping into his role in the Kisii community. What do you make of that? Should he just run for office already?
Dr. Fred Matiang'i is an appointee of the president.
Yes.
And he was nominated by the president and approved by the National Assembly. And when he took oath of office, he affirmed faithfulness to the people of Kenya and the Constitution of Kenya. But as you know, and as Prof has aptly put it, Dr. Matiang'i, in his work, we have seen, is a very firm civil servant, and he believes in certain principles. And if you go against that, then he faces you head on. Some of the people in this government have not been very happy with him because of his style of work. But with that as it may, Dr. Matiang'i is transitioning like any other ambitious Kenyan. He's transitioning now from civil servant to now real local leadership. And I think that's why the people or the leadership from Kisii looks up to him and say, this is our person, and you'll be giving us direction. He has also been very instrumental in ensuring that there is peace in Kisii. So therefore, they look at him as one of their own and as their leader. And if you look at the proposed impeachment, the motion, it is dead on arrival. It is dead on arrival because, Trix, for you to impeach a cabinet secretary, if you follow the provisions of law in Article 154, it requires that that motion, first of all, must be supported by a quarter of the total member of parliament.
Yeah.
My good friend Mohamed Ali says that he got 94 signatures. I don't know whether they are from members of parliament who wanted to go and get loan at the circle, or they are real members who want to, to impeach. Then it must also be endorsed by a third.
Right.
And even before that, it must go through a sequence. But sometimes in 2019, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, made an enhancement in those provisions. And the Speaker in his ruling said that for you to bring such a motion, that motion must be accompanied by grounds of impeachment, and then there must be sworn affidavit on those grounds.
Indeed.
We have not seen that. And therefore, to me, forget about even the timing, because the time is not there. It is a waste of time. That motion is dead on arrival. It is meant to capture headlines. It is meant to fight Matiang politically. It is meant to distract the good work that is doing. It is also meant to